Welcome back to the Kentucky History Podcast. I'm your host today, Jamison Cable, and I'm joined again with Robert Kane from my Old Kentucky Podcast, and we're continuing our discussion about the Great Louisville Tornado of 1890. So this next account is from Kitty Trotter. She was on the third floor of Eclipse Hall, and she recalled that the wind lifted the carpet up from the floor, and she ran to get her pocketbook. Got to get that pocketbook. But the next thing she knew, she had been struck by a flying window. She could see another woman hanging from the eaves of the building. Miss Trotter, she attempted to follow the woman outside when the floor collapsed, and it sent her crashing down on the first floor, and it broke her leg. The passerby actually grabbed her and were able to drag her across the street to a German tailor shop, where she was actually taken care of, but she never got her pocketbook.
That sounds like something out of a movie. Like if you're gonna make a movie,
Yeah.
this would be like one of the scenes in it. Falling from 3 stories through a crushed out floor, breaking your leg, like sitting there, the tornado's like bearing down on you. Somebody like comes and swoops you up, pulls you into a German tailor shop, and you're just like, I just wanted to get my pocketbook, and never got it back.
Never got it. Yeah. Of course, when you get a tornado, you got debris. A man was impaled. I would almost think there was probably more cases than just one, but a man was impaled while he was out in the street. A man named John Doyle says he followed the path of the tornado through the city, and said it increased the damage as it went. So things just got worse.
A proto storm chaser here in John Doyle. He's running after it. It's a wrong way. What are you doing, man? Turn around and go the other way. We do not need this documented. We will put it together later. Yeah.
I just wonder how far back he stayed. I mean, I guess he could have been a mile or two away as it went. You could just follow walking. I don't know. That seems like an odd thing to do, but
it does. Yes. People do it all the time though. You got those, people in like storm chasers are a real thing, but
there was another case where some children and their friend were inside their house, and they got thrown out of their house into the yard. I don't think the house was completely destroyed, but I guess there was some sort of wind vacuum that shot them out there. The tornado goes on to make it to Market Street, and this is where the most people are killed. Every house between 9th and 11th Street are completely demolished. Some men were on the street and they rushed inside. Everybody, told everybody to get into the cellar, as many as they could. But broken pieces of glass and stuff were flying around. And one man, Elmer Barnes, his throat was cut by this flying piece of glass. So crazy scene. I mean, have you seen Twister? You've seen the movie Twister, right?
I already said I saw Twister.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Well, no cows flying around yet, but you think of, I don't know. There's not really that many tornado movies out, I guess, really.
I mean, I really think it's Twister. I mean, why
Twister's
you can't make
one.
another one? Twister's perfect.
That's what I was about to say. It's like, everything. I mean, you get it all in one movie, right?
Right. Yeah. And you mentioned, this is where a lot of the death occurred. And I honestly probably think it's not because that's where the tornado is strongest. It's probably because that's where the people were. And you think about, Louisville now is a very densely packed city all the way out to, the Watterson Expressway, and, pretty densely packed all the way out to the Gene Snyder Freeway and at the edge of Jefferson County. Back then, that was not the case. When you're getting out to the places where we mentioned earlier that would kind of count as like the West End and where I think the GE Appliance Park is, that is, that was nothing. Like that was probably farmland at the time. By the time you get to 9th and 11 on Market downtown, there's a ton of houses. That's where people lived. That was the heart of town. That was the heart of the city. So that's why this is where all the death occurred.
And as things were going on, there was actually another case where a police officer was trying to get into a door to take shelter, but the wind was so strong he couldn't even open the door. But we're going to get to the Fall City Hall, and it was located on Market Street. And this is one of the big scenes of death. It was built in 1871. It was a very popular lodge and meeting place. The building had many different floors. I think it might have been, I know at least 3, if not more. but it was hit directly by the tornado, and it was actually the hall was actually pushed into Market Street. And the thing is, many kids were there attending dance classes. Their parents were attending classes. There was lodge meetings or what is it? Is it Masonic? The Masonic Lodge.
Masonic Lodge. It says here that it was also the meeting place of and I'm reading this from the Filson Historical Society, which actually is a really nice picture. Really nice. It's a very terrifying and sad, but a very clear and high quality photo. And it says here it was the Knights and Ladies of Honor. So I don't really know. That could be a Masonic order. It's some sort of, society that was a club that were, popular back in those days.
Yeah. And that was kind of, I don't know Masons or not, but like this was the kind of things that were going on. Meetings, a lot of people were in this building. But when the tornado got there, the big building begins to shake. The second floor and the third floor collapse in. But the wall that was facing Market Street, oddly enough, remained standing. Another weird tornado thing. But people, the shelter people, some of the people were able to get out. At the end of the Fall City Hall, 150 people were in the building. So, or at the time, I guess, 150 people in the building. So that's a lot of people.
Yeah, this picture is absolutely wild, Jameson. It's like there's just the whole thing just looks like a demolished building. Like it is just literally rubble. There's no wood there's like some wood planks, a few wood planks, but most of it is just completely destroyed bricks. And the Filson says it was 200 victims, but
wow.
I'm sure we're just estimating here.
Yeah,
really sad stuff.
That was just 150 people in the hall, so there very much could have been 200 victims that were out and about as well. So
apparently the Courier Journal reported the Fall City massacre here as a story of woe, which that seems appropriate. I mean, I think it probably could have been even more poetic. They should have gotten Hazel to write the headline there. But that's very, very sad.
On 10th and 11th Street, a group of children were actually saved by their headboards. Their mother was lifted up and sucked out of the window, but she actually landed in the yard with just a broken arm. But their headboards of their beds, I guess, kept them safe.
Wow.
The tornado got to its widest point on Main Street. The tornado was, it says 800 yards.
That's huge. Yeah, that's wild. Huge. That's like 2 or 3 blocks. Yeah. That's massive.
I mean, 8 football fields. I mean, that's just massive. I can't even envision how big that is. I mean, Louisville's entire tobacco district was completely destroyed. There were 14 warehouses, or only 3 of the 14 warehouses were left standing.
Yeah, that was a big industry at the time. I mean, it remained afterwards, and of course, tobacco is very important to Louisville. And the Brown and Williamson Company had massive operations. Its headquarters was here in Louisville, and that's the roots of that industry. And it looks like it's had a huge impact there. But it's crazy. And it's also just kind of wild to think about like tobacco barns in the middle of downtown Louisville. Cookie the cat has something to say. I don't know what he's doing.
Whatever.
So I mean, but that is wild. I mean, I think of your area used to have a lot of tobacco barns, I'm sure too. But not something I think of when I think of downtown Louisville. But the past was interesting.
Yeah. All right. So there's a lot of destruction, of course, and people were in this mess. Maybe I'll be able to share out some of the Filson things. I probably can definitely just post those images on Facebook. I've got to deal with copyright and all that stuff, but I mean, it should be in public domain. Anyway, side note. So all these people are in rubble. People are dying. People are trying to get these people out. A man named Virgil Wright was found buried alive. He had a pistol. He was actually trying to get to take his life. He was trying to because he couldn't get out. But the rescuers actually showed up in time to get him out, to rescue him before I guess he was just so tired and weak from the collapse of the stuff he could not pull the trigger. So that's pretty amazing, really, when you think about it.
Yeah.
Timing, I guess, good timing. The tornado then approached the riverfront. People were in the Union Depot. This was really kind of scary. I mean, think about this happening. So these people were waiting. They knew the tornado was coming. They didn't seek shelter. The tornado lifted the depot and moved it several feet north, but no one was killed. So think about the trains. The trains arriving. One train had just arrived, and as people walked off the train, the roof collapsed on them. And again, no one was killed. So surprisingly enough, a train depot, which would have been very, active during this time.
There's a picture of that as well, Jameson. I'm looking at it here. We can post it. And yeah, it does look like all of these items are in the public domain. So yeah, you can totally post them.
All right.
Yeah, definitely wild. Just looking at this, there's like just a train completely undamaged, and then just a scene of utter chaos all around it. That definitely looks like, I believe you when you say a building was picked up and moved several feet. Yeah, pretty wild stuff.
So the tornado heads towards City Hall, where the Louisville Council is actually holding a meeting. It was said that once a lot of work getting done that day for sure. But it was said that once the tornado hit, their windows shattered. Everyone was in a state of terror, and when the storm had decided it was that it was on its way out, the councilmen and the aldermen, I did say that right, aldermen or eldermen? I said aldermen. They returned to their seats, but then when they heard that the city was basically on fire, they were like, you know what, maybe we shouldn't worry about our typical legislation today, and they went out to help.
yeah, good for them.
Good choice.
Yeah, that is by the way, aldermen have wards. So that's it. Like a count has a county, and a king has a kingdom, and alderman has a ward. Yeah. So if you ever hear like political terms like ward healers, that's like somebody that's an alderman has a ward. There you go.
There you go. So they did read the room though, and they left.
Yeah, they went out there to help people. They realized that their political futures were probably better served by going to help in the midst of the tornado, and also probably just their karma generally, and their overall sense of being good people. So good for them. Good for the aldermen getting out there and helping out.
So Captain John Carter of the city of Madison, he had been warned about the last coming or the tornado coming, and he was actually able to rescue many sailors. So out on the Ohio, he was helping people out that he could. The tornado crossed the river towards Jefferson and Jeffersonville, Indiana. Then after that, it left Indiana and came back to Louisville and went through the countryside towards Carroll County. Is that
Carroll County? I think that might be in Indiana County.
Okay.
County is. Where is Carroll County? I don't think it's. That's in northern Kentucky, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think it's. I mean, I don't think it doesn't border Jefferson, so it might be. I thought that was a bit odd, but it eventually decreased and it went away. One note while the tornado was there, that if the dam had busted, flooding would have been devastating. Boats. There were no lives lost on the boats or on the river, but the damage could have been a lot worse. It would have hit the factories. The time of the tornado was actually good as far as
not a lot of people there.
Yeah, not a lot of people were out.
I mean, obviously a lot of people were there, but not as many as there could have been. Yeah.
Yeah, there could have been, like, if it would have hit the theater district, it would have been a lot more death tolls because a lot of people were out and about on that day. The tornado had to. That was good, but after.
Well, before we leave to after,
yes,
I got in here the amount of time that this entire situation took, where the tornado touched down in Louisville, destroyed everything, and then was gone. How long, Jameson, do you think it was?
Well, reading all this, man, it sounds like, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes.
5 minutes. It lasted 5 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah.
That is crazy.
The whole thing happened that quickly. Man. I mean, that's mind-blowing that it only took that long. I mean, I would think that it would. I don't know. I mean, I guess I've not really lived through too many tornadoes. The one in Oklahoma City didn't last long, so I guess I should be like, oh, that does make sense. But it just doesn't seem like that's possible
in that fast amount of time.
Yeah, you hear about that a lot with it happening that quickly. So that's that's pretty wild.
And the guy who was following the tornado, man, he must be been
Must have been
flat.
booking it. Yeah, must have had some sort of vast or something.
Yeah. So the Courier Journal in March 28th of 1890, one of the writings wrote, no defiant statement can be made of the loss of life, but it is large. It is impossible that so wide a sweep of territory covered with Roman homes, with red calls and buildings of every character does not contain many dead, which only the light of the sun can reveal enough, is known to show that Louisville has been visited by a most appalling calamity, and her citizens who have escaped must spawn ready early today to every call for relief. It needs not relief. This city will, as in the past, care for its own. The care for the own part is very important because as we go on, I'll bring that back up. But the relief effort began immediately, trying to find victims of the tornado. Rescuers found 10 women, all locked in arms or locked in each other's arms, and none of them were actually dead. So many bodies that they found, they actually had to make a barber shop, a morgue, which that's pretty daunting. A saloon owner went to the Falls City. Oh, he went to the Falls City to, I guess, make a call of some sort. And if he had stayed in his saloon, he would have he died. But if he would have stayed at his saloon, he would have survived untouched.
Wow.
But a lot of these accounts, that's just the way it goes. I mean, I guess we can get into the way life goes, but that happens oftentimes. You'll find that in tornadoes or any kind of tragic situation. This one person could have done this one thing differently and they would have been fine, or vice versa.
Absolutely.
Now, you mentioned this before, but a lot of damage is going on, but fires are starting. And when people are moving debris, there's fires, and those things kind of keep the destruction going, I guess, in a way. And we're in the 1890s, and there's the fire station is not exactly what you picture or think of today.
If anything, it's probably like a volunteer fire station, or like, I don't think it's like a municipal service at this point. It is just kind of like some guys that wanted to volunteer their time to do, a service to people, and be called upon if they needed to. And it might have even been like a private situation. Yeah. Where, they serve a certain specific part of town, or people who pay them to take care of them. But fires, I mean,
bucket brigade. I mean, many local residents didn't know a tornado had even ripped through the city. That is surprising because a lot of people talk about how loud tornadoes can be. But again, I guess if it's in a larger population, a larger city, it makes a little bit more sense. But I don't know how you would know.
And, cities are by their nature loud, right? That's like a lot of people around. I mean, and there's already a big storm. I'm sure everybody knew there was a big storm, right? But I think like the idea of, hey, well, there was a tornado that happened. They may at that point have been like, oh, that was that noise. That could have been what went on there. That doesn't surprise me that people, because I mean, if you look at just kind of some of these pictures, it looks like it just cut a gash right through the middle of town. Out to Indiana, like you mentioned, came back across. And it just seems like, I mean, just think about some sort of massive giant just taking their finger and like scraping up a huge segment of the town. That seems the way it went. And if you were not in the path of that, tornado, you escaped unscathed. And we already talked about how if you were just on the edge of it, if you were just right outside of it, you escaped. So, even more so 2 or 3 miles away, you wouldn't even know it happened.
Yeah. So people actually came to Louisville to see the wreckage. Thieves and robbers, of course, showed up, taking advantage of the situation. Some of them went to the depot, the train station. I don't really know why that would be a thing. I'm thinking maybe the train station probably did have a lot of money at the time. I would assume maybe.
Well, and that's where travelers are passing through, and of course at that
luggage.
Time, yeah, well, the banking system's a lot different than it was, and you had to carry your money with you.
Yeah, that's true.
If you put your money in your luggage and it got blown away, like that's if you're a thief or some sort of unscrupulous person, I could see right away how that would be valuable to you.
Yeah. So since with the thieves and so forth, the governor actually ordered 250 men from the Louisville Legion to actually come and protect the property. The city council approved 20,000, which that's
a lot of money back then.
That's a lot of money. Yeah, and actually private donations then poured in, and it ended up to equal about 40,000, which is equal to $1 million today.
Yeah.
So quite a bit. Churches raised money, businesses raised money, and the city used their equipment when needed. Like a lot of people were loaning or letting people live or letting people use their equipment. Kramer,
Sure.
allowed 30 refugees to live in his house until theirs were fixed and they were able to find another place to live, which obviously old Clem had a pretty big house.
A lot of people have in your house. Yeah. That's must have had a big house. Yeah.
The legislature of Kentucky gave money, but the mayor of Louisville, Mayor Jacobs, said, quoting, "I saw how much distress and suffering. The people are brave and helpful, and few are asking help, but many are refusing to accept an offer to them when they can possibly get on without it." So I may bring this up again, but the people of Louisville really took pride in helping themselves out. Like a lot of people were sending donations and stuff, and some of them were actually turning away the donations saying, "Hey, if we need it, we'll take it, but right now we don't need it," and they worked through it.
And probably understanding that there's other people that might need it more. Money's a scarce resource, and if you can get by without it, letting somebody who's in a worse situation use it is probably worthwhile. I mean, there's $1 million these days, of course. $1 million in today's money after a destructive tornado like this, when you talk about how many people who died, a lot of them being like productive members of their family, the fact that like we did not have like Social Security at this point, a lot of, especially if at the time only men were working. If you had your husband die, like that's a really rough situation. So like there's a lot of death and destruction that happened, and so yeah, I'm sure people in those days were like, well, if I don't need it, there's probably somebody else who needs it more. It might not have even been somebody who was in the path of the tornado. Might have just had a family member die, or something else happened to him. So that's nice. That's nice of them. I am appreciative that these days we have like a FEMA or like some sort of federal government response that we can respond to these kinds of things. Yeah.
Well, I actually bring the Red Cross up because here in a minute actually, but so Louisville was able to pretty much rebuild itself without the help of the federal government. The Courier Journal wrote again that the people of Louisville are both able and willing to furnish all the names that the Release Commission requires. No appeal will be made for assistance abroad. Our people hold it both a matter of pride and privilege to relieve the suffering of our own citizens. So again, the Louisvillians, is that how you would say it?
Louisvillians, that's what we call ourselves, yes.
Louisvillians took it upon themselves. They were very prideful and pretty much did it all on their own. Louisville did so well that rebuilding, the Red Cross actually came in, which at this time, this is not the Red Cross we're thinking of today.
Right, yeah.
And they showed up and they left. There's nothing for us to do here.
Yeah. And you think too, about the way that this works, it is a point of pride. You can't really count at this era of time on the federal government to provide much assistance. There isn't much of a federal government. It funds itself through, there's no income tax for 30 years, or I guess 20 years at this point. They have like customs income. If it's some sort of huge travesty, maybe the federal government can provide some kind of funds or manpower or something. But you had to kind of depend on yourself because that is who is there to help you. And there is a bit of pride in being able to take care of your own citizens. That's something that's to be commended, especially in that era when the interconnectivity just isn't there to help people. And the kind of norm of helping people with their issues like this just isn't there. So that is good for us, I guess. Good for my ancestors, my Louisvillian ancestors. Yeah.
The city. So you would think a tornado, right? If it happened now, you're going to bring in some bulldozers, some cranes. Going to level some places out. Garbage trucks, dump trucks, all that stuff is going to come in and be filled up and taken out. Right during this day, they didn't have those things. All the debris was taken out by hand, and Louisville or the city, paid laborers to take it out by hand, which is quite impressive. The tornado was classified as an F4. Obviously, now, I mean, I don't think they had the standards out by then. And you would think the economy would take a huge hit from a tornado ripping through your city. It didn't take as bad as they thought, because people came to look and watch. Tourists came.
See the destruction. Yeah.
Tourists came. I mean, it's a weird thing, but to a tourist attraction being a devastating tornado. But I guess back then you don't have TVs, you don't have news channels. That was the thing. Let's go to Louisville and check out this tornado that rolled through. Interesting. Insurance at the time. This was the issue. A building that was hit by a tornado ceased to be a building immediately.
That sounds like a cop-out to me.
Yeah.
That sounds like a bunch of insurance companies that doesn't want to pay out. So,
However, I will say this, in doing the reading, a lot of the insurance companies that, there for the time, at the time, did pay to help the people out. And that they did that in hopes that, customers would remember that, and, their businesses didn't suffer. We talked about the death toll, the funerals. There were loads of funerals, so many that there were not enough carriages to take bodies to the cemetery and so forth. Scientists say that tornadoes can't do as much damage to cities. That was definitely proven wrong. A few other little side notes about the tornado. A man held onto a doorknob and was able to not fly away, I guess. Some paper items, were found in Oldham County, which next county over. But you think, well, it's right not next to Jefferson County, but Louisville is not all of Jefferson County, so we're talking about
at the time distance. Definitely not. Like at the time, there were other large cities. We talked about this before, like Middletown, which was like halfway between Louisville and Shelbyville at the time. On the way out to Oldham County, there was Prospect, which is kind of straddles the border between Jefferson and Oldham County, and then even further in, there's lots of cities that exist today, and I don't know if any of them were there then, but yeah, there's a lot of space. That's like out I-71 if you're ever driving that here in Kentucky. So, yeah.
So a total of 79 died the day of the tornado, but afterwards, over 100 ended up dying of tornado-related injuries. Over 200 some injured. $2 million was done in damage, but if you compare that to nowadays, that's about $60 million.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
That doesn't surprise me, but I mean that's probably about what you would be looking at if you had a tornado go that direction in Louisville, Kentucky today. Maybe even higher than that, just because of, I mean, if it hit some of the skyscrapers or anything like that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't surprise me that it did that much damage, because this was right in the heart of downtown. Yeah.
Well, so I have one final quote from the Hardesty House. This was they were cooking popcorn, and the door blew in, and then a wall blew in. Their father told the panicking children to hush. God Almighty isn't going to hurt you brats.
Yeah, that guy's probably scared out of his mind as well. He's like, what am I supposed to do in this moment? And call your children brats and tell them God's not going to hurt them. Yeah, that feels like a fair response. That feels like something that I would do. Yeah, absolutely.
So there you have it. That's the cliff notes of the book. If you want to get the book, you can get it on a few different book sites there. Again, I'll try to get Kevin, if I can get in touch with him, to come on and talk about it as well. But tornado. Scary time.
Yeah. This again, we can mention it just briefly, was repeated in an interesting way. Like 80 years later, 1974, with a tornado that touched down. And I mean, and some of these landmarks are probably more relatable to people these days. But it's actually touched down in the Fair and Expo Center, and went through the airport. It went all the way through, actually damaged part of Freedom Hall. And it kept going up through like the Highlands and Tyler Park, all the way up into like Indian Hills, that direction. 3 people died, which, I mean, that just goes to show you the difference in, I mean, this is Louisville is a much, much larger city, much more highly populated, and a lot, but still like through a very densely populated part of town, and only 3 people died, which just goes to show you how important good building practices and good municipal codes are to preventing death in the face of a disaster like this. Not 80 years apart, a significant difference in terms of municipal codes and just like city laws and the way that we govern cities, and reduce the death toll by a huge magnitude. It was just a similar like F4 tornado in a much bigger city, and it killed way fewer people. That one was funny though. Like my boss lived in the part of town where the tornado kind of touched down, and he reported, and this is the 70s. I mean, it's different times, like being out on his bike. And his mother was like, there's a storm coming later. You need to come in before it starts raining. And it started raining, but then a tornado touched down. And he was like, I just stayed outside and looked at it.
Oh, well.
So, that's kids in the 70s. That's a different time as well. But yeah,
he was probably just hoping to follow it on his bike. And
yeah. Right. That was the tornado of 1974. A different story, perhaps for a different time, but yes, tornadoes are a big deal. This was the tornado of 1890, the big one, the most deadly tornado in Louisville's history. So, glad I wasn't there then. And
it's rough. It was a wild one. And you just talking about a lot of times you will have people say, back in the old days, we did things differently. Well, you probably did, but the tornado ripped down through your houses and
absolutely
dropped them like a deck of cards. So
whenever people complain about, I gotta do this to my electrical outlets, or I'm this building code's totally ridiculous. Like, yeah, maybe you don't need it, but when that tornado comes, it might help you out. So
yeah. Well, anything else? You got anything else to add?
No. Please be safe. If the tornado comes, go to the basement, or if you don't have a basement, into the interior
inside
room with a bathroom, the bathtub. That's what they tell you to do. Get in the bathtub. Yep. That's the thing I remember about tornadoes.
There you go. Yep. Yeah, that's it. Well, that's all I got.
Listen to my old Kentucky podcast. That's the other thing. That you should do that too.
Yeah, you can find Robert here on Twitter too. As well.
I'm there.
If you want to get some good insight on tweets, right?
I try my best to provide a scathing commentary and also nuanced opinion. So absolutely. Well, Jameson, thank you for inviting me on to talk about this F4 tornado that happened in 1890. I learned a lot. I want to check out this book at some point. And
it's a quick read. It's not that long, but a lot of good info. And plenty more accounts that I didn't mention. I kind of read through it. Well, this one's kind of crazy. The guy's comment at the end. You got to have that one. So that wraps it up for now. Again, follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Cowboy History Pod and all that good stuff. And if you have any other good Louisville history, throw it our way, and we'll talk about it some more. So, nothing else. Thanks for coming on again, Robert, and we'll see y'all next time.
Anytime. 1/5 of your shows have got to be about Louisville. So I'm happy to do that. All right. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.